Well, you went on to become, I think you worked for the water department.
Yes.
Harold Washington, the late, great Harold Washington appointed you to the water department. And that's known as one of the most corrupt departments in town. But I'm sure you made it better. And you went on to be elected to become an alderman. And then you decided to run for the Senate. And you were active in the state Senate. And then you got knocked off. You got knocked off by, I would have to say, Richard Daley, the young one, and the Hispanic Democratic Organization. Can you give us a brief picture of that phenomena and what happened to the Hispanic Democratic Organization?
As I was seeking my third term in the Illinois Senate, I was challenging some of the development policies of City Hall and developers in the city of Chicago. And I was very outspoken about this. There was a project that was being discussed and debated by the University of Illinois Board of Trustees that essentially wound up obliterating the old Maxwell Street market, some of the working class, what was left of the working class housing and small businesses in the area of what today is known as University Village, which is a part of my district that I will represent on the county board. And this really ruffled some feathers because we were saying that this redevelopment project at the University of Illinois could serve as an example of how the city, the state, and the university could help create a really diverse community with mixed income housing, communities that reflect Chicago's changing demographics, keeping the public housing residents in new housing that could be developed there, having Latinos living in that part of the city, having middle income and market rate housing also all mixed into the creation, at the university's real estate, a model community of the type that I think needs to be created and modeled and taken throughout the Chicagoland area, so that we don't have segregated neighborhoods, we don't have, high-income neighborhoods and, pockets of poverty and, the vertical ghettos that we've had in the city of Chicago. And we thought this was a great opportunity. We challenged the university, we challenged City Hall to engage in this. That seems to have ruffled many feathers, and as a result, the machine targeted me for defeat in 1998 in the primary, and they were successful because they pulled together the patronage armies from the city, from the county, from the state, from everywhere,
and they targeted me. Target.
And I think we underestimated the influence that type of machine politics and approach and negative campaigning and money and just good old-fashioned Chicago thuggery, and they bested us. They bested us on St. Patrick's Day, which was a good day for the machine, March 17th of 1998, and I lost that election by over 800 votes. So it rained all day. We didn't mobilize all of our support. We didn't sound the alarm, and thus learned a very expensive and valuable lesson, but one that has allowed me to reflect over the past 11 years about community building, how we're going to build healthy neighborhoods, and how it is possible to come back into politics and bring about a progressive agenda that will help create the type of coalition politics and political platform that can unite people and bring about positive political changes.
Well, we're going to run out of time. We've got about 5 minutes, but I want to actually I want to talk about the building progressive politics and the legacy of progressive politics. You mentioned Rising Up Angry. Rising Up Angry was part of what we like to call the Rainbow Coalition. There was not only the Young Lords, which was predominantly a Puerto Rican group, but included everybody. There was the Latin American Defense Organization, which was Obed Lopez and his brother, and they basically worked in the Mexican community. There was the Black Panther Party. There were certainly other organizations. There were the Young Patriots. There was Rising Up Angry. And in the late 60s, into the early 70s, we certainly had what we had call a rainbow coalition in this town. And I think that led to the election of Harold Washington. Harold Washington, unfortunately, didn't stick around as long as we wish he had. But I would say that without Harold Washington, we probably would not have had Obama. And so there's a direct link from the kind of work that you did, that I did, and many, many other people have done. I kind of want to look to the future now, and I want to get your take on what do you think about the potential for coalition building and maybe some changes in the election of our next mayor. Do you think Daley is going to run? Do you think that there's a chance that there are other people going to emerge? Could it be Miguel de Valle? What's your just take on the future of Chicago politics?
I think that the role that young people have played in making history and bringing about change in the civil rights movement has been marginalized and minimized by a lot of mainstream media over time. I think the role of youth activists during the 60s and 70s has also been, marginalized and sort of thrown to oblivion and oversimplified as being, infantile politics, irresponsible, and they're not. Had young people not engaged in challenging systems of oppression, systems of racism, systems of discrimination, of corruption and racism, we wouldn't have made the changes that Chicago, for example, has contributed. Without that activism that created coalitions across lines of race and communities in Chicago that young people first started in the 60s and 70s, we wouldn't have had the Harold Washington Coalition that brought together older folks, that brought together a real rainbow coalition. And then that experience had a profound impact on the thinking and the ability to even dream about, an organizer from the South Side running for president of this country. However, those things have all taken place, and it is, the experience of the past 20 years in Chicago, where progressive politics and neighborhood voices in government haven't been as strong as they were during the Harold Washington years, gives us, I think, an opportunity to reflect and to think about what is needed. And what I see on the horizon, Michael, to your question, is young people that became energized during the Obama campaign have now experienced some massive social change expressions, like the massive marches for immigration reform in this country, that I think represents the new civil rights struggle of the 21st century, that really has more to do with human rights and fighting for the rights of human beings regardless of where they live. Because we live in a world, of interdependency, where borders and barriers that have existed should be torn down, are being torn down, but we also have contradictions because, for example, the nativist movement, the xenophobist movement, to want to build a border, a fence, an enforceable fence, and militarize the border, goes against where the world is heading in terms of, knocking down walls and barriers and separating people. It's not an easy issue because, we've seen the fallout from the push for immigration reform by groups that want to bring about laws like in the state of Arizona that wind up criminalizing and dehumanizing certain categories of people around the immigration debate, where people are essentially marginalized and dehumanized by being called illegal aliens and criminalized in that regard. And it's very important that young people and progressives everywhere speak out on this issue, because the issue of immigration will not go away. Even if the issue of immigration reform isn't taken up or approved by Congress this year or next year, it will continue to be with us because it is part of the process of evolution of humankind in the Americas, throughout the world. It's not going to go away. So we should really take stock about the world that we live in and seek to stop living contradictions where we want, trade across boundaries, across borders, yet we refuse to deal with policies that have to do with labor mobility and why people come from other countries to this country and its economy.
Chuy Garcia, I was going to ask you about immigration, but you covered a bunch of it. We're running out of time. I had a lot of questions about how we handle the November elections. We got a candidate, Janulius. We got Pat Quinn. What are we going to do about that? We're going to have to either do a special segment after the show, or we'll have to you come back another time.
We're going to have to come back, Michael. Definitely.
So I want to thank everybody who made this show possible.